Cool. And we're rolling. All right. So, well, guys, welcome to the show.
Happy to be here.
Let's just, be chill and have a good time. Talk about Authentic. I think you guys are building something really interesting. And well, I guess my first question really is I've been obviously know a little bit about Authentic's concept, right? You guys are helping other AVSs essentially to build, their entire off-chain networks, right? How did the idea kind of came to be? Why did you guys kind of pick this lane? And what is the journey till today?
That's a great question to start off. You want to take it?
You can take it.
So it's like the story we always tell. Authentic actually started off as an AVS itself. So
I actually don't know that.
yeah,
by the way.
yeah. We wanted to build something very specific, and that was with like the light bulb moment that you get from learning about EigenLayer just as it was starting out being proposed. We actually initially just forked the code, no live contracts on testnet at all. Forked the code, started playing around with it and seeing what we could build. It was really early in the EigenLayer days. And we started developing our own AVS. And we came up with all these realizations of components that have to be in place, that you have to implement yourself from scratch. For these new types of networks, these new types of services. And we just started one by one implementing them. So like a consensus engine.
What kind of AVSs you were talking about initially, like the thing that you guys want to build?
Well, the initial...
I think we were building an Oracle AVS.
Oracle AVS.
Sort of
Maybe...
like working with Oracle, and in the early days of EigenLayer, there were only few teams that Authentic was building with, like Witness Chain, Oracle, and what else? Lagrange Alternate maybe.
So you guys, I guess, you guys had a team first, or you guys are just kind of like friends?
This was just the co-founders, Yarden and Dean. We joined afterwards.
At this point, it was just him hacking away.
Okay, so it's just him hacking away.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So both of them were like working on these AVS components for like 6 months or something, and they understood the problem, like how difficult it is for any AVS to develop all these components.
Right.
So that's when they had this like idea that, okay, what if there was a stack that abstracted away all these technical and engineering things that are like common for most AVSs, and so that projects can focus on their core offering instead of these low level and that's when the stack.
I just want to kind of keep the thread going. What are some of the sort of key components that, I guess while, the co-founders of Authentic was developing, they identify as super painful and super sort of hard to build? What are some of the things that, kind of sparked the idea of maybe we should package it as a service, right?
Well, I would say the number one is the consensus engine. Since AVSs are these arbitrary black boxes that have inputs, and they go through a verification process of those inputs, and then they do something with them for some other party to consume, right? This is like a very abstracted view of that. Then for each AVS, you have the operators that are actually the backbone of the service that are running the nodes, that are doing the compute. They have to arrive at consensus. And there really isn't a very generalized consensus engine. There are very unique and very vertical ones for blockchains, for like proof of stake blockchains, BFT consensus, all sorts of.
Well, I guess pre-AVSs, they are just like PBFT plus the the Oracle setup, which is like, I guess, data aggregation, where different nodes kind of compare the data they collected from an API, and they calculate the mean. If you are, say, one standard deviation above or below the mean, you are automatically being sort of checked as you're a faulty operator, that kind of thing. I think that's before AVSs. That's the only two, right? And I guess lately we have more sort of ZK, we have optimistic way of checking the proofs, right? So what are the consensus system, in my point of view, they needs to be like, are you guys offering the sort of the breadth, right? The different kind of consensus where people can plug and play, or are you guys having kind of like a specific focus on this is the type of consensus that people building on Authentic will be using?
So like the consensus that we provide is it's a BFT based model where there is like a task performer which is like sort of a leader for any given task lifecycle.
Yeah.
And then the performer executes the task, and the attesters, which are the remaining operators, they validate the task.
Right.
And then they attest to it.
Okay. So it's more like a attestation.
You can look at it very similar to the Ethereum proof of stake model. There's a block proposer, they propose a block. There's the attesters, they run the block, see if it's valid, and then the aggregators post it to the chain.
Got it. So is this kind of like the key node randomly selected in the Authentic setup?
Like how the performer is.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So that part actually is configurable according to you. So what we provide you is the consensus between like the communication between the nodes. How the leader is chosen, that is something that you can implement yourself. So there are like different type of leader election mechanisms. You can choose a static leader where there is a single node who is a performer and it will always execute the task. You can have dynamic leader selection where you can either have, let's say, a round robin mechanism, or you can have a randomly chosen leader. We also like provide examples of these implementations in our GitHub. So AVS developer teams can see and choose which mechanism would fit their system the best.
Right. That makes sense. And let's circle back. You mentioned so consensus is the first sort of major roadblocks that you guys identified being sort of really tricky for basically everyone building the AVS. What's the difference between sort of does EigenLayer provide any sort of because they also have the starter kit, right? Do they have this type of support for different modules and whatnot? What's the difference between, say, EigenLayer's starter kit and Authentic?
By Eigen starter kit, you mean like the incredible squaring example?
Yeah.
So yeah,
They also have the SDK, right?
the SDK, yeah, the incredible squaring example uses the SDK.
Yeah.
The SDK, as far as I have checked it, it has the BLS aggregation part. So like operators can attest to tasks, but it does not include the peer-to-peer communication. Like
Right.
so, like in the
So the
Authentic-
P2P layer is completely like, the project needs building.
Yeah, I don't think that is part of the stack. And also another thing which is more important is that the Eigen SDK at the time when it was first developed was written in Go. I think now they have also launched one in Rust. But then these are basically limitations that AVS teams can only develop in these languages. While the Authentic stack basically abstracts away these components, so you can build in any language you want.
So is it like, oh, interesting. Okay, I actually don't know that. That's really cool. And so consensus and what's the next thing that's in the pipeline that you guys discovered, that are really tricky for people?
We treat the basic unit of work in an AVS, we call it a task.
Right.
And again, that could be anything. And an AVS is like an ever-evolving system. And so it can have multiple types of tasks. You can have a ZK coprocessor that all it does is generate the proofs.
Yeah, that's
verify
kind of
them.
considered one task.
Exactly. But you can have much more intricate and complex systems that do a bunch of things.
Yeah.
And you can also have the configurability of letting specific operators do certain tasks, other operators do other types of tasks, and have the entire thing wrapped in a single AVS. And that actually allows you to inherit security from EigenLayer and configure security in a separate way for each one of those things. So I think we kind of...
So that's more like it sounds more like a Kubernetes, like control plane or Terraform, that type of situation, infrastructure as code pipeline that, you basically configure the underlying operators who are, obviously you don't know who they are at the moment where you are building your AVS, and but you're defining, this group of nodes are doing this particular task, and that group of nodes are doing that kind of group of tasks, and in congregate they kind of combine into one AVS.
That is very true. I think the biggest difference between our ecosystem and like the traditional cloud Web 2 is the fact that we are using economic incentives, actually crypto economic security. That's the biggest thing I think EigenLayer introduced to the world, and its biggest value proposition, that you can have these credible commitments and you can design systems around them to minimize trust. And what we've identified is that we want in the Othentic stack to give the developers that are using it the maximum flexibility when they need to stretch the limits of these
But that
economic
also sounds like a
incentives.
super hard task because, building in the off-chain environment, the possibility is essentially like limitless, right? Just yesterday I was at the Eigen Games, judging all of the university builds, and
Yeah,
what you
thank
realize.
you by the way, because
Yeah, like everybody is using Authentic, so that's a good news for you guys.
we were so happy to see that.
Yeah. But one thing that I've noticed is just the variance in terms of what people are building, right? Because we've been in the industry for a very long time. Before, you've basically just seen, okay, we built another AMM with a slight tweak on the curves, right? Or we've built this sort of lending protocol that has more efficiency, right? So it's kind of like a very, you can kind of fit the project into like different baskets, and where they're going. But this time, it's kind of like the first year where I've actually personally seen where these projects are coming all over the places, where there's like face recognition attestation, where you can take a photo of your face and generate a proof, and then the underlying operators then, according to the proof, do a subsequent actions, right? Then it sounds like you guys are defining the balance between what should be structuralized, right, and what should be basically leave to the developers to decide, how should I design this ecosystem? Because that's also one of my early question about AVS is, I think the hard thing for people to understand AVS is it can be anything, right? And when it can be anything, it's very hard to define it to be the thing, right? So how are you guys balancing the fact that developers need some type of structure, need some type of framework, while at the same time your framework needs to be wide enough or open enough to allow creativity and innovation?
So the way we have structured the stack, we have built it in such a way that a developer who uses us to build an AVS would have to write two services. One is what we call the execution service, and one is what we call the validation service.
Right.
So
What's the difference?
yeah, so like as Raz explained, the way our stack works is that there's a task performer, it will execute a task, and then there are attesters, they will verify the task.
Okay, so one is for the actual task executor, and the other is for the task
Exactly.
validator.
So the task performer node will run this execution service that the developer has written, and all the attesters will run the validation service.
Right.
And the execution service is supposed to execute what the off-chain task is. So for an Oracle example, it will go and fetch the price from an Oracle. For let's say a ZK co-processor, they will compute something, generate a ZK proof of it, and the validation services will now. So when the performer has executed the task, it will generate something for what we call the proof of task. And this proof of task is something that they send to the P2P network, which all the attesters listen to. Now, with the proof of task, these attesters call the validation service and check if the task that was executed was correct or not. So they verify it, and then if they think that the task is valid, then they attest to it, they approve it, or they reject it, and they submit their attestations back to the network, which is then aggregated and submitted on chain. So this way, the task that was executed by the performer can be verified by all the attesters. So this keeps the system abstract in the sense that the developers can build whatever they want while also keeping a structure on like, so they understand how exactly should I develop my service.
Right. So in a sense, the consensus is set where you always have a performer and a validator, a group of validator. But whatever they perform is actually sort of defined by developers, right?
100%.
Got it. That's interesting. So I want to kind of go back to the business side a little bit because obviously you guys have attracted a fair number of developers and companies that are building on top of the Authentic stack, right? So between the early sort of realization of the AVSs are hard to build and to today where sort of a lot of people are starting to use Authentic stack to build AVS. What is the journey from before to now? What is the sort of the are there any sort of big problems that you guys have faced, attracting these customers, or what are some of the lessons here?
The biggest problem is getting a team that is building something to even understand that the next thing they're looking for is an AVS. I think that's like a communications problem that our entire ecosystem has. It's not that we're not doing enough. We're doing a great job as a whole. Like EigenLayer is doing great. We're doing, I want to say about ourselves, but the verifiability of practically anything that EigenLayer unlocks, I think this is what you have to communicate to teams who already know that, yeah, this part of my stack is centralized and I need to address it in the future, but right now I don't have any tools. Today they do. That's EigenLayer. Like there are a lot of parts in protocols and the pipelines of how protocols on chains receive external data, that's Oracles, and a bunch of other stuff that would benefit a lot from verifiability that is worth way more than the perceived overhead it introduces. So that's one challenge I say we have. We're tackling it very actively. We're actively thinking about how best to communicate.
Yeah, I want to kind of like going a little bit deeper into that because as you were mentioning this, Raz, it kind of like because before building this, before kind of like working in the restaking side, I also kind of worked as closely to sort of this off-chain network concept, right? And one thing that I've noticed constantly is people don't actually realize or understand what is off-chain networks, right? Is that the problem that you guys are facing or while communicating with these companies?
You're asking, you don't realize what are off-chain networks?
Yeah. So people, I guess maybe a year or even 2 years ago, people are still like having a default concept where everything I build are either on-chain or centralized, right? If it's not on-chain, I just set up a EC2 server on AWS, do whatever I want in it, and interact with a smart contract and call it decentralized application. Right? That's usually how people do that previously, and now we're saying actually, you don't need to rent a EC2 server. There's a more elegant way and more secure and more decentralized way to do that via, the setup, we just talked about, right? Are you guys still experiencing similar, discussions or conversations with your clients, your customers? Are they still facing the same, I guess, mental dilemma across the board?
Absolutely. When you're building a business, there's this spectrum, especially in our industry. We have the ethos of decentralization and pure democracy and everything that Ethereum is built on. And I guess the crypto community goes back to the cypherpunk movement and all of that. So we're very much aligned with all of these values. But again, when you're building a business, you got to get to market quick.
Right.
You want to make sure your product goes out there and looks for product market fit as quickly as possible. Right. So it does make a lot of sense to use stuff that's just really easy to set up and your engineers are very familiar with, like Amazon EC2s. And so we don't view that as a negative per se, because if a team comes in and builds an AVS, their end game from the start is, yeah, we do want to decentralize the entire stack, but we also want to get to market quick. So it's this balance they have to walk between. And I'm happy to see, there's varying degrees of how teams approach this. I'm happy to see like that the general mindset is towards, yeah, let's get to market, but then decentralize as quickly as we can.
Right. And just imagine I am a new customer, right? And I'm not too sure about AVSs. I don't really understand about anything about AVSs. What is your pitch to me, and what is Authentic's selling point? How are you guys convincing all of your customers to get onboarded?
I think the best way to answer that is like when someone comes up to me personally and says that, hey, I'm not sure what an AVS is, I'm thinking of decentralizing my service. I spend most of my time explaining to them what EigenLayer is, what are the value propositions of EigenLayer. And because I feel like if a person understands what EigenLayer does, then they automatically understand what is the value proposition of Authentic.
Right.
Because I think the product speaks for itself. So you explain to them that EigenLayer is a restaking protocol. It allows you to spin up a proof of stake off-chain network. It allows you to bootstrap liquidity much faster.
Right.
Compared to if you would do it, let's say, in an independent fashion. And once they understand like how an AVS is set up, it's just easy for them to understand that, yeah, okay, building all of these things will require a lot of engineering overhead, and Authentic will just abstract away all of them for them. So
Right. Got it. And so, sorry, I was cutting you off for the point two. The first point being it's just
The
faster
balance?
the balance and faster to market. What about the second thing?
Like some of the challenges
Yeah.
that we have. Oh, with the teams building?
Yeah, the problems that you guys have seen, from the beginning to now.
Let me think. I mean, it's the regular startup feedback loop. You have an idea, you build it. EigenLayer plus the Authentic stack enables new types of businesses, new types of use cases, and a very quick go-to-market. Although we're more about configurability and extensibility than being quick. And I would actually say that from my experience working with clients, we allow them to hit their roadblocks faster, but we don't really see them experiencing the roadblocks from working with us. It's from like venturing into these
So
new.
they basically kind of like you guys accelerate the process, allowing them to actually face the hurdles of PMF.
Yeah,
quicker.
exactly.
That's an excellent point.
We're very happy to be in that position, and we're also very privileged to have very professional and extremely talented clients and teams that are building with the stack and really pushing it to its limits, each one in their own respective field. Like we have Redstone Oracles, which are
that's a big one.
It is.
They
It is.
recently are going to launch on Binance.
Yeah, and we're very, very excited to be working with them since the beginning. They're amazing partners, and they are taking the stack to its limit on one end. But on the other hand, you have Giza, who are also building DeFi agents, and like that's like the holy grail. Everybody say, yeah, let my agent just maximize USDC yield for me across chains, and they're taking it to an entire different level. And then we get to work with the stack and see it operate for very different types of use cases.
And certainly through the entire journey, seems like now was, initially I feel like all of the Authentic Stack projects are very early. They're like basically nobody knows about them. And now, with Redstone, for example, already kind of launching their services. And I heard they're like rapidly bootstrapping their services super fast compared to other Oracle projects. That's how they kind of gain their market positioning right now. You guys certainly have also learned sort of the hurdles of these projects, what the problems they're facing along with their growth, right?
Mm-hmm. You wanna take this?
About the engineering challenges or the
I mean, like just kind of like the journey of learning from all of these sort of your perspective clients, and what are, I guess this is not really a question, but I would assume you guys have learned a ton of things, along the journey to also gain some insights from
You
these
need good developer docs. I think nobody talks about this. I mean, a little bit, but you do need good developer docs and very clear way to communicate what you're building can do and can allow for. You need a
you need also good technical support,
Yes.
quick and responsive support. Like if a client is facing some issues,
Right.
and I think another thing that the clients like about us is that we help them a lot with the design phase as well,
Right.
because we are building with so
Are you guys still doing a lot of like hands-on, customized or tailored build-out process for the clients, or right now more like a hands-off?
we try to help the clients as much as possible in as many aspects as possible. Like since we are building with so many clients, we're working in this field for so long, we kind of have like a good understanding of how AVSs work and what things make sense and not. So like when we have these clients and one-on-ones with developers, we also try to help them with their architecture process on how they can build an AVS. Apart from that, like Raz especially also helps them a lot with the operator ecosystem. Like when they're launching their AVSs, how can they gain restaked capital? How can they gain operators uh, that opt into their network? I guess Raz can expand more on that.
Yeah, but the reason I said I did like not in my head was that we did have a few opportunities of like bigger names that basically need a very specific use case, and you could choose to take the stack in a specific direction and tailor it to very specific things. But our strategic way of looking at things is our product, Authentic's product, is the Authentic stack, and that's what we're working on. If we need to develop some new features for a client or something like that, we'll obviously do it because that's what we're here for. But that's what we're focusing on. That's to answer your original ones. But yeah, do you want to get into the whole operator thing?
Yeah, I wanna ask before we get into the operator thing, because I know that's kind of like the next focus of you guys. Before that, right, we talked about Authentic Stack, and in my perception, Authentic Stack is really kind of like this framework for building AVSs. And look around, sort of, um, variety of different engineering products, right? Frameworks are usually not the product that you charge on, right? Frameworks are usually something that you do for distribution, right? I guess that's also tied into the operator discussion a little bit, because what is the current business, as the current point? How does the business work surrounding the Authentic stack? How are you guys charging these customers, and how are you guys making a profit as a company itself, using the Authentic stack? That's, based on my understanding, it's kind of like open sourced, right? Everybody can use your framework to, just launch the AVSs themselves, even, right? So how do you guys balance the sort of the open source framework versus the profitability or the revenue generation of the company?
So yeah, the Authentic stack is completely self-deploy. You launch your own contracts, and they're yours. That's part again like the ethos, and we want to build infrastructure for people to use. But of course, you got to make a business. Yeah, we're here to build a business on the way of building valuable tools for the community. And the current revenue model for Authentic is, if you launch with us, then we will take a small portion out of the rewards the AVS pays to operators.
what does launching with Authentic mean?
Basically
Is it kind of like
deploying,
a full package service that you guys are offering?
basically just deploying your contracts through the factory contract that we have. Um, Pretty much the way you would like safe, right? Kind of forgot the word for it, but yeah, safe. It's been in the news lately. But the this revenue model where we take a little bit out of operators' rewards. First of all, an AVS has to be paying rewards. I'd be happy to touch on that a bit later.
We'll definitely touch on that.
Yeah,
It's a
that's one
hot
thing.
take.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other part is, it's a no-brainer for AVS to work with us because they don't need to pay, essentially. On the other hand, operators are maybe not going to like it because we're like eating into their profit, you could say.
Yeah.
It's not the case. I'm good friends with a lot of operator organizations, a lot of people in the industry that are running nodes, and actually they're the backbone of these AVSs. They are, I think, a hugely underlooked area whenever we talk about this stuff. People like to focus on the restaking part and forget that there are actual people setting up actual nodes, maintaining
Right.
them. It's like the backbone of this entire.
And it's very hard. Being sort of actually attempted to do that myself. It's like
It's extremely fragmented. One onboarding document will be completely different than another. Different types of key managements that they have to do. Remember, they have to like continuously programmatically sign messages within these AVSs. So there's a ton of different things you need to look into. And we try to address most, if not all of them. At least like the most valuable ones, the valuable problems to solve for them. But just to finish off my previous point, the people I'm in touch with in organizations that run operator nodes are generally, I would say, very happy to be losing out this small portion to us, because when they set up the new marginal node for an authentic stack built AVS,
it's very similar.
they get so much with the stack already and that they're familiar with, they know the processes, it saves them so much in overhead that's worth, I would say, even today, way more than what they're, I would say, losing out.
So in a sense, the operator then becomes a portion of your customers, gradually, right?
They are absolutely our users because part of the stack is the node software that we provide to AVSs to give to operators. It's completely self-build and everything.
It's
open
highly
source.
standardized nowadays.
Yeah, it is. Comes with monitoring tools and integration into their own tech and alerting and incident response stack. And that's why we've put a lot of focus on that. So yeah, to justify what we charge, I would call it.
Yeah, and then then right now I think it's a good place to talk about the operator sort of the thing that you were mentioning, the operator side of the business now. What are they? What's the specifics? What can you share to the audiences?
You're saying like what the way we approach operators? The only communication, the only relationship we have with them is, one of professional and support and how to work with the Authentic stack as an AVS. But we generally try to give support to the AVS teams themselves, and they are in touch with operators. We don't want to be a centralizing factor in this industry that operators go through. We also built it technically around that. There is the economic part of things, like how much stake is being allocated towards AVSs, and a unique model, unique stake model of EigenLayer, all of that. But in general, if I know operator organizations that are looking to secure more AVSs, there's the AVS building with the Authentic stack that's looking for operators, yeah, I'll make the connection. Hey, Liam, meet Yash. You guys can talk. But in general, I want them to bootstrap their security. I don't want to bootstrap it for them.
Right. And so I think we covered the past and the present of Authentic, right? What is some of the future initiatives that you guys are taking? Obviously, you guys have a big team now, like 14 people. What is the next stage for Authentic, and where are you guys going?
So yeah, the number one thing, I guess. So like yeah, as we build out the stack, the client often have like some requests that okay, can we have this feature? Can we have that? For example, as Raz mentioned that we introduced operator monitoring, like dashboards we're using Prometheus and Grafana. That was very helpful to operators. So like we are constantly adding more and more features so that our clients can so that we basically give more configurability to our clients to set up their AVSs. In terms of like big features, there's definitely slashing that is supposed to be developed. EigenLayer have released their slashing model on testnet and I'm going to launch on mainnet soon as well. And we are supposed to integrate that with our stack. Also, like the current slashing model is sort of trivial because this current model is like, okay, you request a slashing event on EigenLayer and EigenLayer just like burns the slashing, the tokens. But like Eigen is also internally working on like V2 slashing, if you can say that, where the AVSs can configure what will happen to the slashed stake. So, for example, let's say that you are a DeFi AVS and there was a slashing event on your AVS. So, there was a malicious activity. So, what that means is that probably your users lost some funds, right? So, if you are doing a slashing event, well, the AVS can configure that the slashed events can go, let's say, to the operators or to the users who are affected by this malicious event, so that it provides, let's say, sort of insurance to the service. So yeah, this is like one of the big features that we are currently also researching upon and developing and trying to get out on mainnet because like yeah, once slashing has been implemented, then we can say that okay, our stack is actually complete now because right now the stack, well, it has restaking, it has operators. Yeah, operators are working on it. Operators can pay rewards on it, but like yes, there's still no slashing. So there's technically still no verifiability until slashing is implemented. So yeah, I guess that is one of the biggest features that we're looking for. And apart from that, I guess it's also ecosystem growth. Right. Finding out more AVSs, finding out more teams who can build AVSs, and just growing and spreading awareness about our stack.
Right. And I want to talk about the slashing and rewards first, because that's certainly one of the main things that I always wrote about for restaking, which is why the hell are these AVSs not issuing rewards, right? That's number one. And do they even know they need to issue rewards? Number two. And how much, right? That's, I guess, the $1 million question is how much rewards I should actually issue to my restakers and operators, because right now, frankly, we don't have a market yet, right? If you see sort of the previous pattern that we have, they're kind of like heavily marketing driven, where you have like stages of or phases of airdrops, right? You airdrop to the operators, and that's how you kind of get the rewards from that. But that model certainly can't sort of have longevity in terms of the market adoption, right? So what are your thoughts on slashing and rewards, and how specifically I wanted to learn about how are you guys sort of educating your customer and clients, about slashing and rewards?
About rewards, I would say that the AVS just needs product market fit because at the end of the day, if there's a company that has a product which has users, well, that company can generate revenue from that users. And if the product is verifiable through an AVS, well, then the revenue can be directed towards the operator rewards that can actually fund this entire operation. So AVSs need to build products that have product market fit so they can attract users and attract revenue so they can give out because like if they don't have any money to give out your rewards then they'll probably just like inflate their tokens, which is definitely not a sustainable model. A sustainable
But
model,
why do you think these operators are still operating these AVSs nowadays?
because they probably hope that AVSs can attract customers and attract market share and actually generate revenue and build a sustainable model.
The first question you asked was, why the hell is nobody paying rewards? The answer is because they can. EigenLayer launched amazing launch, launched alongside EigenDA, which is a great product, competing in an extremely competitive but also extremely highly scalable environment of DA. Let's put that aside from now. But they also launched a, I would call almost feature complete ecosystem where you could facilitate any economic activity. The only thing missing was slashing. And the reason slashing was missing is because the same dollar of stake can be allocated to several AVSs at once, like the original EigenLayer security model, which don't give slashing guarantees to AVSs. And if you don't have an end-to-end complete economic circuit, you would call it, you can't have an environment where rewards are being paid, which is not like an airdrop situation. So the entire TVL of EigenLayer goes to secure not all AVSs, but operators can have. There are a few big operators with billions of dollars worth of stake, and they're securing 20, 30 AVSs at once, which on one hand gives a ton of security to these AVSs.
On paper, yes.
Yes, exactly. And that's the reason unique stake is so important. First of all, everybody wants restaking to get a lot of yield from all the AVSs that you're restaking. So far, it can't work economically. I do envision some research in the medium to longer term future that will allow us to make commitments with the same stake to several AVSs. But for now, we do need the unique stake model in order for first to AVSs to compete for TVL for the first time, which I think is great. Because then they would actually have to demonstrate a working service, a working model to attract that stake. Operators have opportunity costs now, not just between AVSs, but between other opportunities for that restaked assets in different ecosystems.
Yeah.
Competition is great.
Right.
And so if they won't be paying rewards, they will not get security. If they don't have enough security, then they can be attacked. Right. If they're running live on mainnet and their service is attacked, it's probably not a good place to be in. That's one thing. The other thing, which is right now in my view, is the biggest unanswered question that from which everything else is derived at this moment,
Right.
is how much crypto economic security should an AVS attract? Essentially, let's imagine we have a perfect system where the AVS can plug in a number. Let's say I want $100 million of staked assets, and I want it in ETH. Certain LSTs, like I want it, let's say, in this one, but not that one. And let's say Eigen token, maybe some stable coins, right? How do I make sure I, first of all, get just that amount of stake, not less, not more, or at least like hover around it? And that number actually, from it is derived the return for the stakers. So it's kind of like this magic number that on one hand is higher by a specific margin from the cost to attack the AVS.
Yeah. So how much economic, I guess the unit economics the system is processing, right?
The thing is with that is it differs by use case.
Right.
So
Also, that's true.
exactly.
Yeah.
That's probably the hardest part of it, because an AVS could be anything, really. Then all those variables around its security can also be anything.
Right.
So that's an entirely different rabbit hole, which there has been initial research and advancements in that part. There's a specific research paper by Gauntlet. How much restaking security do you really need? Came out last August, I think, and it applied to the old security model of restaked assets.
Right.
And now we got to venture into this new territory and kind of figure things out as we go. No real takeaways to share yet.
Well, that sort of the economic portion, since it's such a, I would say even that's kind of like the bigger problem or the bigger selling point for EigenLayer before sort of all of the architectural things that sort of come in later, in a sense? Will the economic advisory or the economic settings be a part of the future of the Authentic stack for clients?
100%. They're part of the present, by the way. But 100%, that's one of our biggest focuses. You want to talk a little bit about the implementation? I don't want to steal the stage too much, but
The implementation of what?
of all the different features that we allow them, we allow them to specify. We have this thing called voting power, in the stack. So you get to determine as the AVS developer the modification of the specific stake that an operator has when it relates to their voting power. When it works like Ethereum, where more than 2/3 of the network votes on the validity of in Ethereum, it's a block, and the Authentic stack, it's a task, which again can be anything, and you can determine as an AVS developer to modify. Let's say I am an AVS that want to attract security with its own token, to remove the token from circulation, from being able to be sold, right? That's something a lot of projects probably want to do. So I want to secure my AVS with my own token. I want people to stake it to secure the AVS. So I can decide to give them X times the regular voting power they would get with staked ETH for my AVS if they come in and stake my token, which is something that we see actual people use and get a lot of value out of. You want to talk about a little bit more about the tools we have for them?
Right. So like a stack allows people to basically set something called a fee calculator. The fee calculator is basically a smart contract that will allow AVS developers to like implement their own logic of how they want to calculate fees as well. So like if say an operator, like the AVS operators agree on consensus of a particular task, you can implement that, okay, these operators have these voting powers, and we have like, as Raz mentioned, staking contracts on we can support multiple staking contracts per operator. So like an operator
What EigenLayer calls strategies.
what
strategies.
call strategies, we call them staking contracts. So like an operator can derive security from, let's say, restaked assets or its own token, or basically any ERC20 token for that matter, right? So in the fee calculator, like an AVS can just determine like, okay, so like an operator who has like this and this tokens can get more rewards. They can also have more voting power that they can configure, but they can also like configure these things in the rewards. Like this operator will get more rewards because they have more voting power, because they are getting secure from these particular tokens. And like a mental model that I have for getting security from restaked assets versus unique stake is that so like think of like a US bond treasury, right? Because in like traditional economics, a US bond treasury is considered as a risk-free return, because you consider that there is nothing in the world that will give you a return that is less risky than the US government, right? So that means that any single service that like gives you a return must be higher than this risk-free return. So if you like draw an analogy of that into blockchain, you can consider that Ethereum is the most decentralized network out there. So the Ethereum staking return is the risk-free return of blockchain. So if you're providing any service and you're giving out a return, it should be technically higher than the risk-free return, right? So if you have a unique stake, you would have to pay out rewards accordingly, that it should be higher than the risk-free return. But if you're getting security from the restaked assets, you can actually provide a lower return because that return is already on top.
That's a very nice analogy.
Yeah, because like when you gain security from a restaked asset, you're actually improving the efficiency of capital, because you already have that capital logged into the Ethereum network, and you're using the same logged capital to secure other AVSs. So you can actually pay less rewards, because like people don't have to like lock a different piece of capital, right? You're not taking money out of liquidity, you're not taking money out of circulation.
Yeah.
So in order to do this,
Are you guys imagine some type of fee market, even just because we have so many AVSs now and experimenting with so many different assets, and in the future, potentially we can then say, okay, there's a fee market for every single set of type of assets that are AVSs.
What do you mean by fee market?
A fee market, like I
Meaning
guess
like
you mean
meaning
by
like we can then basically calculate the most optimized or the fee that are in equilibrium.
like how much fee should you give out for a particular strategy in a particular area? Yeah, I think there should be, because like each area, like, but this is a very I guess like a unique thing to figure out for each AVS in each situation, because like let's say that I'm restaking some ETH into a particular AVS. So I'm already getting some rewards on Ethereum, and now I'm expecting some rewards from that AVS. So the rewards that I'm getting should ideally be greater than the risk I am getting. And what is the risk? That my stake can get slashed? How can my stake get slashed?
So you're saying that for each AVS, this reward rate is actually different based on the
risk of the AVS,
the risk of the
because
AVS.
there are actually two types of risks. There is something called, and this is something that Shriram talked about in some podcasts that I listened, that there's an endogenous risk and an exogenous risk. An endogenous risk is basically you get slashed because you did something bad. So like you have control over what the operator does, and if you don't follow the protocol rules, you will get slashed. So if you decide to always behave honestly, you will never get slashed. So you can consider the endogenous risk to not be part of this. But apart from that, there is also the exogenous risk. And exogenous risk would be like, let's say the AVS developer did not specify the protocol rules correctly. So even you behaving honestly led you to led your stake to get slashed, or let's say there is a bug in the implementation, or the bug in, let's say, smart contract. So these are things that are outside of your control.
How can we, this sounds like it's highly irregular, right?
Yeah,
For
yeah,
every
like
single
audit.
AVSs, and you're essentially saying we need to consider all of these internal and external factors that are unknown and take that into account into sort of the market rate, right? And how what are you guys thinking about, achieving that, or even guiding the users, since you guys are now sort of the company outside of EigenLayer that guides the build out of AVSs.
I mean, I guess the way I think about it is, for smart contracts, AVSs should audit the shit out of the smart contracts. Like, just have tons of, like, security should be the number one focus of every single firm that is building on the blockchain, right? If any company does not have like a minimum amount of, let's say, audits by reputable companies, that should like, first of all, raise a flag on its own. And what I imagine, or at least what I would like to imagine, is like, there are audit companies that audit smart contract bugs. Recently, there have been audit companies that expanded their domain to auditing, let's say, Rust contracts, or like Rust-based code, and like I think Zelek particularly does consensus audits as well. I think there should be also audit companies that specialize in consensus, and like specialize in AVS consensus of AVS protocols. Because as I mentioned earlier, let's say you're in AVS, you have to like list out a protocol spec that, okay, all my operators are gonna do this, 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 and this, and if they behave honestly, then the AVS will run fine, and if they don't behave honestly, then they will get slashed. So there could be audit companies that specialize in this protocol, in these protocol rules, and then they can audit these companies to say that, yeah, these rules seems fine to us, these implementations seem fine to us. That can, like, not eliminate the risk, but like put like a stamp that, okay, it is audited, it is verified, it has less risk than, let's say, if it wasn't audited.
For sure.
Yeah, and you want to add on that?
No, that's really comprehensive.
Yeah, that's very good.
The idea of extending the auditability of systems to being more than just deterministic code outputs, or like attack vectors on specific code, to economic models, even just having generalized economic models or specific ones for like large buckets of use cases would help a ton.
Yeah, but I guess that's also benefiting you guys, right? Because you guys are essentially setting up the guardrails, or even setting up these buckets for whoever that's in the future building whatever they want, right? And your guys are setting different buckets at different abstraction levels, in a sense where if you guys work with sort of a audit company that audits your code, that could already guarantees a certain level of security compared to like just kind of like a newbie or like a new company just building something completely out of their own sort of knowledge or from say EigenLayer start kit, right?
Yeah, 100%. If we're still in that space of security or really optimizing for, let's say, stake, because you want to keep TVL inside, pay out sustainable rewards, and still be a profitable business, whether an AVS is your core business or it's part of a broader tech stack. Um, I think the bigger we get, we'll have more of these challenges in production. Kind of like if there are the safe servers compromised just for Bybit's access to it, then you can actually get drained for $1.4 billion. It's only natural that actors will try to, I wouldn't say also attack, yeah, but challenge these systems as they grow, which is an amazing challenge to have because it means we've probably reached escape velocity.
Yeah.
But in the way I define escape velocity for AVS right now is you have to, sorry for directing the conversation there. That's just what's on my mind 24/7. Economic system, economic activity where the AVS provides a service that the consumer of the service is happy to pay for. The operators get their fair share after we take the small portion of it and are happy with that, happy with the returns they get. The delegators get their fair share for those operators and are happy with the yield on the assets that they delegate to the operators. And the AVS treasury or whatever also gets paid by all of that. Once we have a few real life examples of those systems that are operating on mainnet, and we can see them demonstrating a sustainable business, that's the way I define escape velocity, and like that's our main goal that we're working towards. That's my North Star building the stack.
Well, then my final question for today is really when do you think, this first set of AVSs, can achieve the goal that, you just mentioned, having a complete economic model where slashing and rewards are functioning at the basic level, maybe not the most optimized level, right? But functioning at the most basic level. We already have Redstone Oracle launching its own token. It's kind of like the first light from the seemingly very long tunnel that we have all traveled, right? How long do you think, the ecosystem will see the first sign of these signals that can tell us, okay, restaking is actually potentially working?
Yeah. I'll outline the way I view like the steps to get there. First, you need to have what I would call feature complete EigenLayer, which is going to happen once slashing is live, and unique stake and operator sets. The first initial step to get there is rewards v2. It's already on mainnet, which we've implemented, and we allow AVSs to pay rewards through the new rewards coordinator contract by EigenLayer. That's the first step in the right direction. The next step is really slashing conditions and well-designed slashing mechanisms operating on mainnet for a few AVSs, and I'm even speaking generally, not just with the Othentic stack. When slashing is live on mainnet, I imagine it'll take a quarter or two to see deployments of slashing mechanisms on mainnet as well, and them starting to work. I believe they'll be pretty modest and pretty forgiving.
And even for slashing, there are operator ejection.
Exactly.
So
what we
those
do as
like
well.
softer form of punishment compared to just slash your assets completely, right? Yeah.
Also, when you slash your assets, you can actually even set like how much assets you need to slash.
Yeah.
You can penalize it on like we can have like variable penalization. You can have ejection, as you mentioned. And another thing that can happen, for example, is reputation based like operators as they work on an AVS gain, because they can gain reputation based on like how live they are, what's the uptime, and that they have another system requirements. And if for small deviations from these optimal conditions, like let's say they're not live, oftentimes they can like have an impact on these reputation scores as well. So there are like a lot of forms to incentivize and penalize operators in these systems. And yeah, after slashing, I think the most important thing that we've also touched before is that AVS is achieving a sustainable business model where the rewards are paid out through the revenue that they are generating by the service that they provide.
You have 3 of those, even if they're small, even if they just demonstrate a working system and a what we would call small scale, just the existence of them will alert the big players and the bigger protocols, which have, and a ton of them do have, centralized components in their stack, which they want to be able to
Yeah, we've already seen
independently.
this case with Uniswap, with their Unichain, um, the core component of the sequencer being decentralized by
Absolutely.
UVN, right? So it's kind of
Absolutely.
like signals are popping up in the ecosystem across the board everywhere.
Exactly, like the Ethereum rollup centric roadmap that is going to have, one rollup per app pretty much requires a ton of inner chain operability, which has to be an AVS, right? The solving networks, intents, they all have to be built on verifiable rails. So pretty much all of the things that require off-chain execution trend
Towards
infinity
restaking, yeah.
towards becoming AVSs. But once you have these first few, is canaries in the coal mine a good thing to say here? You'll see the big players being reassured that this really is the future of that part. And again, what EigenLayer unlocked, which is the verifiability of the off-chain execution. And then you'll see the biggest names in the industry being built as AVSs, even if it's just a very small part of their tech stack. And after that, really the rest of the economy, people who don't even care about tokens and just need a way to, for example, verify to their users that an LLM was trained in a way that is transparent, right? That's like, I would say, the next step of open source AI. One example. It can go to really any use case.
Perfect.
No, and I'd like to think that all these AVSs should be as background as possible. Like the more boring an AVS is, the better it is. Like the more sense it makes. So like,
Well, I think right now it's already kind of like a trend where, say opacity AVS, they start sort of adopting a very traditional SaaS model. I think the industry is trending towards the tried and true models that are that exist in Web 2, for example, and most of them will be boring. Most of them will be sort of service based, but that's kind of like what the model that actually generates the revenue, that's actually generating the capital that can flow back to the actual sort of supporters, operators, risk takers. Very positive notes to end everything. Well, thank you, Raz and Yashi. Before we end, I want to give you guys an opportunity to, any last remarks, or if people are interested in Authentic, how can they reach out to you guys? What should they do? Where should they check out?
First of all, authentic.xyz, best place to dive into it. There's a link to our docs there. There's a lot of things on the agenda that we're going to be working on, releasing, and really that align with our incentives of getting more people to that like the first thing that I think we talked about, which is somewhere in their mind they know they want to build an AVS. They just can't place their finger on it yet. That's what we're trying to do. Everybody that wants to talk to us, please do. All of our socials on X, Twitter, we're on Telegram. Just hit us up anywhere, and we'd love to talk to you about whatever, even if it's just
Perfect.
theoretical stuff.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you, Liam.
All right.
Amazing.